So all of these things that you so desperately want to believe come from a place of hate for you. Again, I say, come from a place of love for my child and other parents. Their concerns come from a place of love for their children. Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you for the support. On my channel, I give my opinion and perspective on things that are happening today, things that I think actually matter to everyday people, especially those of us that are trying to raise kids in the insanity known as today's society. We are not CEOs of big corporations, we are not part of mainstream media, and we do not live in the Hollywood bubble. We are also not politicians in Washington, D.C., but we do have to live with the consequences of the decisions being made and the narrative being pushed by the people in the previously mentioned categories. If you feel like that describes you and you know exactly what I'm talking about, please like this video, leave a comment below, also share it, also subscribe to my channel. All of these things help me to grow my channel and hopefully to reach more people who value logic, reason, and sanity, because I feel like it's in short supply these days, and I'm sure you feel it as well. That being said, let's get into today's. I just wanted to touch on something that seems to be like a recurring theme in my life. I speak out a lot about the issues that I have with this gender ideology in school, the effect that I think it's having on kids. Kids making these long-term decisions about hormones and puberty blockers and surgery, and just the concerns that I have about the long-term effects of it. Not only that, but also regarding the content that they're being exposed to in school, and just, you know, the psychological and mental effects that it's going to have on kids, the earlier that they're exposed to it, especially at a time when they're just not at an age to handle these concepts and ideas. So I raise a lot of concerns about this because I do have children of my own that are in school, that are, you know, along these same ages, and, you know, I see so many things happening to kids that are just so heartbreaking. But of course, anytime I raise concerns about this and say that, you know, I really think that this is inappropriate, I really think that we're doing a lot of harm to our kids, and repeatedly seeing the proof of that, of course, the more that I'm called hateful. And I'm sure that any of you that have ever expressed, you know, some kind of common sense perspective and said, hey, this is probably not a good idea, this is a really dangerous path that we're putting our kids on right now, I'm sure you've been accused of being hateful, because it really isn't possible that we would hold these positions for any other reason other than just hate and contempt for a particular group of people. It's not possible that it has anything to do with, you know, love for our children, concern for kids, and looking at the long term, the bigger picture of what could happen of being exposed to these things too early, and of course the drugs and the surgery that will have long-term permanent repercussions that they are not old enough to understand or commit to. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. But first, I wanted to go back just a little bit. You know, just not that long ago, just a few years ago, I'm old enough to remember when the biggest issue for the LGBTQ community, I think just a few years ago, it was just the LGB community, I think, I don't even remember, was equal marriage rights. They just wanted to have the same rights as heterosexual couples. They wanted the same treatment, the same recognition, the same laws, no discrimination, you know, all that. And I remember, you know, just a few years ago when I think it was pretty much legalized by the Supreme Court across all 50 states, you know, that happened and we all just kind of went, okay, whatever. I mean, I think some of us probably, you know, there are some that had particularly strong opinions about it, and there are different reasons for that, but ultimately we're just like, here you go, can we get back to living our lives now? And you know, it just kind of got tiring. It's like, I am not that concerned about your sexuality. I am really not that concerned about who you're attracted to and who you want to do things with in the privacy of your own home, in the privacy of your bedroom. Like, I really want to give exactly 0 minutes of my day, as, you know, just no time and attention to that. I have so many other things that, you know, to worry about, to be concerned about. I really, you know, here's the thing that you wanted. Like, can we just go back to not talking about your sexuality 24 hours a day? And most of us just went on with our lives. We're like, okay, whatever. Then, it just kind of went to, sorry, I had an itch on my back. It just went to, we need more LGBTQ representation in our TV programs. And then we needed more LGBTQ representation in our cartoons. And then we need more stories focused on gay couples in our schools. And then started all of the hate narratives. And first it was anybody that's a Christian and reads the Bible, you hate gay people. Anybody that votes to the right hates gay people. And then it just kind of evolved to, if you don't celebrate Pride Month, you hate gay people. And then anybody who doesn't celebrate every single time a gay person comes out in public, who doesn't, do a dance in the street over them expressing their identity and coming out as their true selves, you don't celebrate, you hate gay people. And it just went on this progression from, we just all want the same rights, to, if you don't celebrate every single one of us and recognize us in every single possible way that we demand you to, then you just hate all of us and you want us to die. So there's that. And even through all of that, I feel like most of us just kind of listened to the whining and said, whatever, like, all of this praise they were demanding, all of this stuff, all of this entitlement, all of this recognition, we just kind of were like, I still have better things to do. I still have other things going on in my life. I mean, whine all of you want. Like, I am not going to sit here and make my life about your sexuality. I mean, as I said before, like, you do you. I'm still not at a place where I feel like I need to dedicate all of my time and attention to your needs and your ego and your narcissism. So after all of that, sorry, I do have to make notes sometimes so that, I don't get too far off on a tangent, but after all of that, there was this whining, there was this like compiling of expectations about how this community felt that they deserved to be treated, not just on a general scale, not just through laws, not just through non-discrimination, but just by you as an individual person, as someone who's just living your life. All of these things that they felt entitled to. It was not until, even then we were like, whatever. Even then, it was not until this group, this community, and I'm not even talking about all of them, because I'm straight up, I know that there are so many gay people and so many, alternative lifestyle people, whatever identity you want to call yourselves as, that are just like, yeah, we're good. We're living our lives. Like, we're not with the insane people. We're not with the entitled people. So I am not talking about everyone. I'm saying like the loudest voices in this community that seem to think that they're entitled to all of our attention and all of our praise and, everything else. It wasn't until these loud voices that think they deserve everything under the sun decided that, hey, we're going to put this like everywhere in your school. And if any parent rejects this, it's because they hate us. And not only that, they started this idea that it also gives us the right to turn your child against you, to turn children against their parents, to tell their parents that they are not supportive of these new identities and these new lifestyles, and that makes them a hateful person. And if that wasn't bad enough, it involved beyond that. And now we're at this place where our public school classrooms are like floor to ceiling in books about gender identity. And not only that, there are no stories about heterosexual couples. They want stories about anything but traditional values and anything but gender norms or binary gender ideas. Now they want every kid to learn that gender means absolutely nothing, that your mind and your body, it's not important that they're connected, and that sexual interactions with adults is a normal thing, and that hiding these things from your parent is what's going to keep them safe. And then hormones, puberty blockers, and surgery. These decisions are apparently just as minor as getting your ears pierced. And all of this combined, the only reason your parent would object to this ideology and this indoctrination and these sexual interactions and hiding things from parents and the hormones and the drugs and the puberty blockers and the surgery and all of these things, the only reason your parent would be opposed to it is because they just hate trans people and they hate gay people. That's it. So that's where we are now. And every time we conservatives or anybody to the right of like Bernie Sanders opposes a demand from the LGBTQ community, we're just called hateful. And when we resort back to our just live and let live mentality, which is generally pretty standard across the board on the right, it's just like, I just want to live my life how I want to live it. Live your life how you want to live it. Like, stop bugging me. Every time we resort back to that, they take 100 miles with that inch. And now we're at a point where even saying that letting kids be kids is bad. Protecting kids' innocence is bad. Letting kids just focus on kid things, on things that kids should be focused on as a child in their childhood, is bad. And that the fact that we all, up until 5 minutes ago, agreed that kids needed to be kids, the fact that we're still holding to that and they've changed the rules because we don't go along with their rules, we're now just hateful. It has nothing to do with anything else. It has nothing to do with the fact that, hey, you know, these standards have worked pretty well for kids in the past. You know, we have eyes. We're raising our kids. We can see that they are not mature enough to handle all of these other concepts and ideas and explicit and graphic content, and definitely not mature enough to understand the long-term repercussions of body-altering drugs and surgery, that we're just hateful. Like, that just, it just comes from a position of hate. So let's just be clear. None of this opposition, none of this concern has anything to do with hate for anyone. And no parent should ever make a decision based on hate for someone else, hate for another group, hate or based on politics, based on needing so badly to oppose the other side, or just to prove how either conservative or progressive they are. And if you are a parent making decisions on that basis and that foundation, you're really a crappy parent, because you are only thinking about yourself and you're not thinking about the well-being of your child. Your child's upbringing and well-being is not political in any way and should not be used as some kind of symbol for how progressive or conservative you are. But I cannot emphasize enough that there is no parent who says, hey, I don't want my kid reading porn in schools because they hate you. Or I don't think that kids should have access to this kind of content because they hate you. Or that, hey, I don't think that my kid is old enough to understand the long-term permanent repercussions of hormones and surgery because they hate you. Because, and please hear this, not everything is about you, believe it or not. I don't want my 11-year-old child putting drugs into their body that are powerful enough to completely halt their mental and physical development and have these long-term permanent consequences, or to have surgery and make a decision about their body that has impacts for the rest of their life until they are old enough to understand those long-term consequences and those long-term implications. Because heaven forbid I allow my child to make a decision about their body, to chop something off of their body, and then when they do grow into that maturity and experience and they get into adulthood and realize what it means to make those kind of decisions and regret it. And not only that, they look back at the fact that they were allowed to make those decisions at such a young age when they didn't have that maturity and experience. And they look at me as their mother and say, you did have that maturity and experience. You do understand the long-term consequences of permanent decisions and committing to these things. Why didn't you stop me? Why didn't you guide me? Why didn't you tell me that, hey, you need to wait until you're old enough to understand and grasp this? So, you know, all of this is my entire thought process in why I don't want my child, and it really is heartbreaking to me to see any child be allowed to make these decisions at such a young age, especially when their parent should be the first one to say, I do understand the long-term repercussions and the commitment that you are making in chopping off a body part or taking drugs that are strong enough to alter your body. I do understand this, and I'm going to tell you right now that you need to wait until you're old enough for you to understand it, so that you can not only understand the implications of it, but that you can understand the risks that you are taking, and make sure that you know enough to be able to commit to both. Because I don't want you coming back to me and having regret over this thing that you now cannot reverse. So all of these things that you so desperately want to believe come from a place of hate for you. Again, I say, come from a place of love for my child, and other parents, their concerns come from a place of love for their children. I'm not asking about, what's appropriate and not appropriate for kids to have access to because I hate you. It's because I'm concerned about the healthy mental and psychological development of my children and what they have access to, and not being able to process and comprehend everything that adults can access and comprehend and process. When we used to all agree that adults that were attracted to kids posed a risk and a threat and potential harm to them. And we agreed on that because we all knew that there were long-term psychological and mental and physical challenges and struggles that they could face if they were exposed to somebody who had these kind of thoughts and attractions. So the fact that we all used to agree on that, I have to wonder if you're assuming that my positions come from a place of hate, I have to wonder, did your positions come from a place of hate? Or did it come from a place of common sense and understanding that we didn't want to put our children at risk for the long-term repercussions of interacting with these individuals? Are we against the sexualization of kids because we hate gay people, or because we know it's not healthy for kids to be exposed to graphic content at a young age? Are we against hormones and puberty blockers and surgery for kids because we're afraid of queer identities, or is it because these things have permanent consequences that kids are not capable of understanding? Do we want doctors to be honest about the long-term effects of drugs and hormones and the risks of surgery because we're trying to oppress our kids' true identity, or is it because it's dangerous to put something into your body or to start cutting things off without knowing what you could be dealing with after? That you need to be able to consent to the risks as much as the consent to the changes. Or as more detransitioners speak out, and there are thousands by now, is that there are long-term side effects that we are not being told about, that the medical community and trans activist community don't want you to know about. And I am not a medical expert by any means. I don't pretend to be. But I've always felt that a drug that was strong enough to permanently halt the physical and mental development of a child's body, that there was no way that this thing would not have long-term permanent consequences, irreversible consequences to a child's body. So no, I don't hate trans people. I don't hate anyone, really. But every time we try to talk about these legitimate concerns about what is happening, it's this brainwashed cult who, as I've said before, I believe have been programmed, are incapable of hearing anything but, you oppose this, so that just means you hate. And you could not be more wrong about the hate. Because you know who's helping these people after they change their mind about transitioning, after the community who said that they were their new family and accepted them with open arms and made them feel like they'd never be alone again. The people who are picking up the pieces is not that community. It's not the trans community. It's not the LGBTQIA community, because y'all are shutting your doors on these people immediately. You ostracize them, you silence them more than you silence those of us who are outsiders speaking on this. And these people are left alone to deal with the physical, emotional, mental, and psychological devastation of what has happened to their bodies. And you know what happens when they reach out to us? The people that you said hated them so much, we don't go out there and talk about how evil trans people are. We go out there and talk about the fact that this could be anybody's child. It could be anybody's teen. It could be anyone's loved one or friend. That this does not need to happen, that this kind of pain and suffering is so unnecessary. And we talk about how important it is for kids to focus on reading and writing and spelling and to get this hypersexualization out of their schools. And we point to the fact that this is having devastating effects that we are seeing, and that kids need to be focused on building character and to be kids. And we continue to emphasize how much that we need to be telling people to love themselves as they were born, that their bodies are beautiful and that they need to love who they are. Because, I mean, wouldn't that avoid this unnecessary pain? Wouldn't that serve as a healthier outcome and create young adults who can make decisions that they are sure about and that they will not regret, and that they can understand what care that they will need to give to their body should they decide to go through with one of these surgeries later. That's not hate. Information is not hate. Being concerned is not hate. It's compassion. This is acceptance. And this is what being loving is.